EAGLES, Eagles.
Ball Thursday on Birds 365. Joe Krause sitting in for the Alexander James Krause. AJ will be back on Monday along with the great John McMullen. Welcome in, JAKIB Nation. Johnny Mac, good morning, brother. How are you, sir?
Now I got AJ. Every time you show up, I got a new Alexander. I got Alexander. Now I got AJ.
Well, the only other AJ in town we know we expect
we're going to lose him, so we need an AJ.
So we need a new AJ replacement. So I don't know whether or not he likes that or not. But for today and tomorrow, as Zander is away, AJ is out of commission. I'll be running shotgun with the great John McMullen here on Birds 365, and we got a good show planned for you today on the eve of the 2026 two-day rookie camp, Johnny Mac, which gets underway tomorrow, 2 days, May 1st, May 2nd. So Friday and Saturday, the rookies are already in the building. What happens tomorrow?
It's an onboarding process. I like to say the veterans aren't allowed on the field, so you're just kind of working out together with all the rookies. There'll be the undrafted guys. You'll have that confirmed. The undrafted free agents. There'll be probably 15 to 20 tryout players trying to catch the eye to find a 90-man off-season roster spot. And really get your first look at the draft picks. That's, the biggest thing about it. Makai Lemon, obviously. A lot of hype going to be around Uar Bernard, just to see him in person. And not only the freakish athletic ability, but the size, the power, everything that he brings to the table. That's going to be interesting. Cole Payton's probably going to be running things as the quarterback. I'm sure they'll have a tryout quarterback as well. But not veteran players, just kind of onboarding for the rookies and getting them up to speed for the OTAs, which happen later in May. So all part of the process, but you're not going to see a ton. Obviously, you can't run. You can't run a practice without your actual players, and the veterans are not involved in this type of thing.
Now, is this a media event, John? Is this something where you'll be there along with other members of the media to cover the team to cover this 2 days? Are players available for the media after the practices? What's the layout?
This year I'm gonna be down there later today, sometime in the afternoon to do some interviews with some of the draft picks, and we'll have a quick look at practice on Friday. It's sort of like a regular season practice. We'll only be in there for 15 or 20 minutes, and then Saturday's closed completely to the media. So. Not a lot as you get, to OTAs and you get to mandatory minicamp and training camp. Obviously, we have to see every practice mandated by the NFL, but not quite at that stage yet. So it's just basically get a look at the players and their new numbers. That's always exciting for the fans.
I saw I don't know if it was an actual quote. I think it may have been a quote from Lemon himself where he was considering some sort of an offer to Devonta Smith for a number swap. I don't think that's something that we should anticipate is going to occur.
Well, I always warn for the jersey people. I always warn with the rookies, as just because they're that first number they get when they cut down to 53 won't necessarily be the number they are. There's some high profile guys where you can say, all right, he's got his college number. He's going to stick with that. But if you want to buy a jersey, wait and see, because when they cut down to 53, you'll often see number changes, guys changing numbers to things they prefer and things like that. But with Makai Lemon, Devonta makes a lot of money. That's going to have to be a nice offer.
Yeah, right, exactly.
Yeah, and obviously, now I haven't talked to Devonta about it, but he's done pretty well with that number. So, Mekhi might have to go in a different direction.
Yeah, he may have to find a different number that will suit him for the roster. We're exclusively presented by Fritz Bianculli, a different kind of law firm for the seriously injured. Hour number 2 of the show today here on Birds 365. Devin Jackson will be along from the Philadelphia Inquirer. We'll get his take on the Eagles draft and what he anticipates. Of course, the draft ended a week ago or less than a week ago, but last Saturday night. And now we spend the next couple of weeks, including right here on Birds 365. You and Zander have talked about it. JAKIB Nation has engaged in the comments about it. That's what we do. We'll talk about the draft picks, how it all unfolded, and then transitioning into what we can expect. Who's going to make an impact on this team, Johnny Mac? And I think while there may not be a definitive answer to that, the post-draft power rankings and who's going to impact the team and in what way, all of that speculation has actually started. I don't know if you look at the class and you say, hey, Mekhi Lemon is going to be an impact player for this team, not because he has to be. Well, he does have to be, but because he will be, because he's that good of an athlete.
Yeah, I think it's an interesting pick because I think a lot of people speculated the Eagles would go offensive tackle in the first round because there were so many. It's an obvious need. Howie regards it as a foundational position. I think the realization finally hit home with a number of people that AJ is not going to be here anymore after June 1st. Not AJ Krause, but AJ Brown. So, all of a sudden you built up this sort of wide receiver room. I compare it to Moneyball. You're trying to replace them in the aggregate. You can't replace them just one-on-one. So you're trying to replace them in the aggregate. Now you have Mekhi Lemon to add to Dontavian Wicks and Hollywood Brown, and maybe you can go about it a different way and get similar styles of production, plus play a different style of football. As we all know, they're trying to evolve the offense, which was not aesthetically pleasing last year, to put it mildly. So you have to factor that in. But you want a first round pick that you traded up for, and Howie's on record saying, he was a top 15 player in the draft. You want that guy to contribute. Doesn't have to be week 1, but at some point in the season, you'd like to see him take over as the wide receiver 2. Devonta Smith obviously bumps up to the wide receiver 1. Early in the season, maybe Dontavian Wicks has the advantage because he's coming from Green Bay. He's the veteran. He understands the new offensive coordinator, the terminology, the scheme. So maybe he has a leg up early on. But either way, even as the wide receiver 3, Mekhi Lemon's got to contribute. He's got to contribute. Doesn't have to start, but he's got to contribute right away. And by the second half of the season, you would hope that he is the one of the 2 receivers on the field, no matter no matter what the formation is. So with Devonta Smith, and you have to get there. We'll see if he can.
A little bit later on here in the first hour, I'm going to play 2 different audio clips from Howie Roseman, who was on the Shine Show on Mad Dog Radio on Sirius XM. I'm going to play 2 different quotes, Johnny Mac, and we'll talk about both of them. I mean, the question comes up, I guess, how different is the offense going to be? And I want to start with Devonta Smith, because your reference to Devonta Smith being the number 1 with the departure of A.J. Brown. I always wondered how effective, and let me make sure I ask this question correctly. I always wondered how much better Devonta Smith was in a game situation because A.J. Brown was on the field versus now Devonta is the number one. Before, they're two number ones, they're both number ones, but the reality of it is, or was, A.J. Brown was one, Devonta was two. Did that make Devonta Smith a better receiver? He's a great receiver. He's a great athlete. He can catch the ball, all that. I'm not disputing any of that. I'm just wondering if the loss of A.J. creates a different dynamic now for Devonta the player, or is it a duplicate of what we've always seen from him since he's been an Eagle?
Well, yeah, I mean, sure. Obviously, if you're talking to opposing defensive coordinators, you got to pick your poison, and they're trying to stop A.J. Brown first and foremost in the passing game, and then becomes Devonta Smith and Dallas Goedert and on down the line. So now he bumps up a spot, and I always compare it to a baseball rotation. You got a number two starter that probably a lot of times doesn't deserve to be an ace in baseball. Sometimes that's the case in football. I remember the example I used, Jordy Nelson at the height of his career in Green Bay was a tremendous receiver, tore his ACL, I believe, 1 year, and all of a sudden Randall Cobb, who was a great number two, had to be the headliner, and he just wasn't cut out for it. And the offense struggled dramatically. I think Devontae's cut out for it. The one concern I have is his size. He is who he is. He weighs 170 pounds. He's very physical for 170 pounds, but at some point, traffic, if you're that number one guy, you might have 100 receptions. You might have more, and you're going to get hit a lot. Can his body hold up to that? That's my only concern. We already saw him as the wide. People forget in 2021, the year before AJ got here, the Eagles drafted him at number 10, and he was the number one receiver as a rookie. And he set the rookie franchise record for yards. It's only 916, but I say only, they're not a great passing team. They're not a high volume passing team. They haven't been with AJ. But he showed everything that he could be a top receiver in the NFL. And over the years, that's only gone up as the number two, most of his years, 3 1,000-yard seasons. So you've already seen it. I don't think there's any question from a talent perspective. He's a number one wide receiver. Again, the lone concern is, does the body hold up with all that extra traffic and the extra touches? But, he had 95 catches in 2022 when they had their best offense. He had over 80 in 2023. He had 77 last year. So I'll tell you this, Krause. I don't worry when it comes to the Philadelphia Eagles. I don't worry about Devonta Smith. Not one worry in the world.
Yeah, no, I'm not worried.
Production.
And I didn't mean to pose the question as if I was worried about him or minimize, what he means to the team and I just was trying to phrase the question and wonder, when AJ's on the field, what opportunity does that create for Devonta that will now not happen? The difference being now, Devontae's got to go out and create the opportunity, where before, as you said, if a DC's primary shutdown is A.J. Brown, that creates a opportunity for wide receiver two. Now, Devonta is being game planned to be the shutdown. How does that dynamic change? One, for him as a player. Two, with the structure of the change, of the new offense. As you said, the offense kind of was, I don't know. I don't even know if you can say middle of the road, probably back end of the road last year. So what does all of that mean for him, your new wide receiver one, and then we'll get into Lemon coming in. I think he has to have a bigger impact than maybe he even realizes coming into the season.
Well, definitely. I mean, you can shut anybody down if you want to. If you really want to, you could bracket them and as a defensive coordinator and take them out of the game. And if that's the case, Dontavian Wicks and Mekhi Lemon have to step up. They're going to be seeing a lot of one-on-one coverage in those types of situations. They're both sort of the wheelhouse. They're not speed guys, but their wheelhouse is route running and separation. So they should be able to generate that. The question is, I think more of the question goes to what does the offense look like? How does it change? Is it still going to be a bunch of hitch routes, a bunch of outside the numbers throws, or are they going to utilize the middle of the field, all that kind of stuff? Are they going to, be more of a timing based offense? Are they going to throw with anticipation?
Well, what do you expect, Johnny Mac? What do you think they're going to do?
Yeah, Zander and I talk about this all the time. I think ultimately they'll do what they did when Kellen Moore came in. There were a lot of the same talk. They're going to expand the offense and they're going to try to evolve it in OTAs when they start in May and training camp. But once the season starts, they're going to go out and try to win football games. And I think Nick Sirianni's proven that, and they will scale back to what's successful. Ultimately, I think it's going to look a lot like it's looked in the past. Because I'm a big shelf life guy. You take advantage of what you have. And Jalen Hurts' strengths are not necessarily what everyone wants them to be. So, instead of trying to pound the square peg in the round hole, why not take the round peg and put it in the round hole? That makes more sense to me. The Eagles have had tremendous success. I get it. Last season was disappointing. Last season was ugly, but I say it all the time. So much of this fan base, and even the Eagles themselves, act like they won 5 games. They won 11 games, won the NFC East, the only team in the NFL, by the way, to win back-to-back division championships. Made the playoffs for a fifth consecutive season. And yeah, the passing game was ugly. It's always been ugly. It's never not been ugly. And who cares about the style and the style points of the passing game? I don't know. Evidently, some people do. I mean, is it more important? Have you enjoyed all the winning? What's more important?
Well,
I'm taking advantage of the quarterback while I have the quarterback. That makes the most sense to me. That doesn't mean don't try to get better, but it does mean I think there's a lot of perception that they're going to play a different style of offense no matter what, and they're going to force Jalen Hurts no matter what to do it, even if he fails at it. I don't believe that. That's bad coaching. So ultimately, I think every single offensive coordinator that's been here during Jalen Hurts' tenure, and I'll leave Doug out of it because he didn't play. But, Nick Sirianni, when he was the de facto offensive coordinator, to Shane Steichen, to Brian Johnson, to Kellen Moore, to Kevin Patullo, and now Sean Mannion, all the previous ones eventually settled on trying to take advantage of what Jalen Hurts does best, because that's what coaches are supposed to do. I imagine Sean Mannion's going to fall in that category as well, just like Kellen Moore did. You look at Kellen Moore in Dallas, you look at Kellen Moore in Los Angeles with the Chargers, and you look at Kellen Moore in New Orleans last year with Tyler Shuck, completely different offense. But he had a different style of quarterback here. He built the offense around the cornerback. They won a Super Bowl. He got a head coaching job. That's good coaching.
Well, makes sense to me. I mean, play to your strength. I mean, be the weakness where your talented player comes up short, but coach not only to the strength of your quarterback, but coach to the strength of your offense. And if your offense is 15th, or let me just see if I can. Let me just see if I got. And bear with me, Johnny Mac. I got to go back and forth with my glasses a little bit to be able to see.
Yeah, I'm getting to that point. I feel your pain.
Bear with me, JAKIB Nation. 2025 Eagles offense, right?
Yeah, it's not great.
24th in total yards, 19th in scoring, 18th in rushing, 23rd in passing, and if you want to factor in their third down percentage, 27th in the league. That was the rankings from a year ago. Eagles won 11 and posted an 11-win season. As you said, won the NFC East. So from that, we now are ready to really start talking about what 2026 is going to be. Jalen coming in to the season will prepare in what way? When, Jalen's a hard worker. Jalen shows up. Jalen wants to win. Jalen's a competitor. When he sees that body of work from a year ago and now begins to get ready outside of what he's been doing in the offseason, what does he prepare to do, or how does he prepare to be, the quarterback? The same but improved? What's he going to be, Johnny Mac?
Well, you're always looking to improve. I always go back to what Jim Swartz told me. The off season, the spring is for teaching. The summer training camp is mainly evaluation. There's some teaching in the first couple of weeks, but mainly evaluation. And then the games start, and it's all about preparation for the next team, and that's when you prepare. So, I do think there's a bit of a disconnect as explained to what goes on in the NFL. Like you're always like the schedule's not even out yet. It'll be out before the Eagles get on the field for OTAs, but it's not like you're sitting there in whomever they're going to play in week one, and you're worried about week one when you start OTAs. You're trying to, and in the case of Sean Mannion, you're trying to install a new offense. You're trying to teach people the new terminology. You're trying to get them up to speed to that. So the teaching aspect of it, there's going to be a bigger learning curve on the offensive side than the defensive side with Vic coming back. But you have all the new players. You have to onboard them. So I think there's a big disconnect. And, some of it bleeds over. As I said, the teaching bleeds over in the summer with evaluation. The evaluation bleeds over into the regular season because you're always evaluating the players you have. But that's when the preparation comes in. So maybe in that week one game, maybe you spend a week and a half preparing for it. That's it. I think there's a lot of discount. Well, you got all this time to get ready for insert name who you're playing in week one. Doesn't work that way. You're trying to work on yourself. And so if you boil it down to an individual player, they're trying to get better like every player. Technique, fundamentals, be honest with yourself. Look at your weaknesses as a player. Try to improve them as much as possible. And that's where people talk about Jalen's work ethic and his willingness to do that, which I think he's very willing to do it, and he's very willing to work on it. But at the end of the day, and it's a great Bill Parcells quote that I always throw out there. Your job as a coach, when the preparation comes up to it, is to try to go beat the other team. Now, how do you do that? Well, you accentuate the strengths of your players. You try to minimize the weaknesses. So there's a story where Parcells, he's talking to his scouts about the draft, and they're saying, this guy can't do this. This guy can't do that. This guy can't do this. And he slammed sort of the table and he said, guys, I don't want to hear what they can't do. Tell me what they can do, and we'll build around that. It's simple, but it's really lost on so many people. There's no perfect player. Myles Garrett, probably the closest thing. He's not perfect. Everybody's got strengths. Everybody's got weaknesses. It's not an insult. Then you have the group of Jalen Hurts where you think, oh, you can't insult him about anything. He's got strengths. He's got weaknesses like everybody else. The goal should be to build around those strengths. This is the least controversial thing I've ever said, and I say it all the time, and it goes over everybody's head because the belief is that's not how the NFL works, and they're getting ready for this, and they're getting ready for that. No, they're just trying to get better as individual players and as a team during the offseason and training camp. And then you get to the preparation aspect of who your opponent's going to be in that week. That's why you hear, somebody will ask Nick Sirianni in season, is this a trap game? You got Dallas in 2 weeks, and he'll always say, and it's boring as hell, he's not thinking about that. He's not thinking about Dallas. It's not how it works. And I think that's lost on a lot of people.
Let me see if I can do this, Johnny Mac. So bear with me. I want to play an audio cut from Howie from Sirius XM from yesterday. Let me see if I can do this. So bear with me.
I know there was an article in ESPN about Jalen Hurts, and we had Jeremy Fowler on the show. I'm curious to get your reaction and what you see with your quarterback who's won a Super Bowl for you, been phenomenal in another Super Bowl. How would you describe Jalen as a player and a leader?
Well, as a player, I think his success speaks for itself. Ever since he's been the starting quarterback, all we do is go to the playoffs, and been fortunate to be in 2 Super Bowls with him. Incredibly consistent, and he continues to want to evolve and grow. He continues to want to get better, and I think you're looking for that in anyone who's had success. Are they content? Are they looking to be challenged? And he's like that in all fronts. In terms of his work ethic, his character, those can't be questioned. There's no doubt about it. So I think for us, really feel like it's unfair that this guy who's had this much success has had to go through so many public things, but also understand we live in a different age, and these things happen. And all you need is one person. I'm sure that unfortunately for both of us, Adam, we probably could find people who don't love us as much as we like each other right here. Adam, it just happens in this world. And so, you're not going to make everyone happy, especially when you're in leadership positions. But I think that sometimes we forget, this guy has never done anything bad off the field. All he's done is win on the field, works his butt off to be successful, is supportive of his teammates. And so, yeah, it's always surprising and disappointing when you see stuff like that, but also understand this is the life we've chosen.
I love the life we've chosen line. I love that because I hear that so much. But
what is this? What is the sound bite tell you, Johnny Mac? And then I'll tell you what it tells me.
I think Howie's conflating articles. Number one, I think a Fowler piece and Tim McManus, my buddy, did the original piece, and then there was a follow a piece which kind of claimed the Eagles were trying to send a message through the media to Jalen Hurts because he was, didn't listen to whatever whoever about what needed to change with the offense, and if you send it through the media, he might listen. I think he's conflating that's what he thinks is unfair. Not saying it's right or wrong, but I think he conflated that. As far as you know, everything else is typical standard. Obviously, he's got a tremendous work ethic.
I mean, it sounds to me, Johnny Mac, if Howie Roseman is being genuine in that answer, with some deflection, I'm sure, and everything else, but if the true hardcore basis for his answer is genuine, the front office is 100% behind Jalen as a quarterback. Win, lose or draw based on the fact of the success that he's had up to this point, which includes a down year a year ago, a down year from a standpoint of statistics. Again, I don't know if I guess that does factor into it for sure, but the team won 11 games. They win games, and they have won games, and they've won the ultimate game, and the ultimate team game with Jalen as your quarterback has been a success in Philadelphia to this point.
Well, yeah, I mean, obviously they've been a success. I think, if you kind of look at, you got to be careful. Nick said, and how he kind of alluded to it, success is also, people always talk about handling adversity. They don't talk about handling success enough, because there's different issues you have to overcome. One of them is how he just mentioned there. Is he content with the success? Is he headstrong to say, I've already won, I don't have to evolve? So, to say he's 100%, this organization is 100%, I think is sticking your head in the sand. If they were, they wouldn't act like they won 5 games. They would act like they won 11 games and won the NFC East and said, you know what, we didn't reach our expectations because Landon Dickerson wasn't healthy and Lane Johnson was lost for half the year and Cam Jurgens wasn't healthy. But they changed the offense. They fired people. We didn't. Actions always speak louder than words. It doesn't do Howie any good to go up in public, and he's very close with Adam Shine. It doesn't help his team to go bury the quarterback. And I'm not saying he wanted to bury the quarterback, but to say he's 100% behind them, no, there's very deep concerns about where this is going, to the point where they feel they have to change the offense. Think about that. Think about all the success. We didn't force them to change the offense. That's their goal.
Well, yeah, I mean, to an extent, agreed. But it's the front office that's moving A.J. Brown. It's the front office that...
Well, there's a lot of context to that. Let me just say that, if everything was copacetic, the front office wouldn't be looking to move A.J. Brown. The reason they're looking to move A.J. Brown is because he doesn't want to be here. And, at that point, the old Mike Tomlin line, you'd rather have volunteers than hostages. You don't want hostages. If they don't want to be here, you don't want them, because bad things are going to happen. So, and why doesn't he want to be here? Because of the passing offense. So it's not everything has context, but the Eagles would rather have a happy A.J. Brown than have, Mekhi Lemon or Dontavian Wicks. But the reality is the reality. So you try to make the best of the situation. Sorry, I had to break in with that.
If you're going in a new direction with the offense, which is a front office decision or a head coach decision or a collaborative between the powers that be, then why wouldn't AJ, if AJ's unhappy with the pass offense and the offense is making a change to become a better offense and a different offense, why wouldn't AJ, why wouldn't the front office say, hey, we're not trading you. You're one of the best receivers in the league. I'm sure Mannion can find a way to utilize you in this offense. There's no need. There was no pressure to get rid of A.J. Brown other than because he was unhappy. But that could be that unhappiness can be diffused, for lack of a better word, with a new vision, with a new coach. Can it?
Well, in theory, sure. I'm sure they made that lobby. You lobby to that extent. But again, and yes, you can hardline it and say, well, you're one of the best receivers. We don't have to trade you. We're not going to trade you. And that's why I bring up the Mike Tomlin quote, because I think it's a great one. Then you have a hostage. You don't have a volunteer. And bad things tend to happen. That's why you see ultimately when players want out, they usually are shipped out eventually, because of it can create more problems down the road than it's worth. And I think that's how the Eagles read the situation. I think from AJ's perspective, he doesn't think it's going to get better. So he wants out. He might be wrong. I'm just saying that's his thought process. People have their opinions. That's his thought process.
Johnny, what's the behind the door of that process? Is that is that conversation happening directly with AJ? Probably not. I'm assuming AJ has an agent. He doesn't represent himself, does he?
No, yeah. Joe Siegel was his agent. He was out there in Indianapolis shopping him around at the combine. And that's where it became evident that the Eagles were going to move him. And there was a list of teams that he preferred to go to. So yeah, it's been well known in the NFL for a long time that AJ Brown's not likely to be back with the Philadelphia Eagles. And the Eagles have known that as well. That's why they've operated the way they've operated. Howie did the best he could to massage it for PR purposes and say, we're just trying to add to the wide receiver room. No, he knows. And I think it finally hit home for people because the assumption was he might take a receiver in the second or third round. Then he ends up trading up for a receiver. And well, if you think he's trading up for a receiver in the first round and AJ's going to be here, there's a nice bridge in Brooklyn I'd like to talk to you about because.
Yeah, we don't know. We don't. We agree. 100% agreed. I was just trying, and I don't want to rehash the whole damn thing. I was just trying to figure out. I got the number one receiver, or not number one. I got one of the top receivers in the game. Since the trade since the trade occurred on draft day 3 years ago or whatever it was, our offense has been better. Our team has won. We won the ultimate game. We went there twice. We redid his deal last year. He's still under contract. He's a big weapon in the league. I'm going to let him go because he doesn't want to be here because he doesn't like the offense. But, oh, by the way, we're changing the offense. We're going to restructure the offense because the offense couldn't get it done last year or the offense fell off. But I'm still going to let him go. Now, again, I'm not familiar with all the back conversation and everything else. I'm just bothered by the fact that a talented player at his level is out the door. And the domino effect of that, I think, could be much greater than we even anticipate, to the point that if the offense was middle of the road a year ago, or if the offense dropped off significantly during the 2025 season, what does that mean for the offense in 2026 with a new coordinator, with Devonta Smith being number one, being now the number one wide receiver instead of WR number two, with the offensive line and the offensive line being banged up going into the year? What's that look like? Man, could this get worse than it was a year ago, or does it all of a sudden change and the offense gets much better?
I don't know about much better, but I think it's going to get better. And it's not going to get better because of any scheme change or any coaching change. It's going to get better because of the health of the offensive line. If those guys are healthier, number one. Number two, they're trying to fix first down. They were very poor on first down. I think the assumption is, well, the passing game stunk. Actually, the running game was the bigger issue because so often they were in second and long, third and long, and then you don't have a high octane passing game. And not only on top of that, you're in 3rd and 12 instead of 3rd and 5. It makes it much more difficult. So those are the two biggest issues: fix first down, and as with every NFL team at every moment in time, health. If you lose Hall of Famers and your 3-time Pro Bowl guard is a shell of himself, and your 2-time Pro Bowl center is a shell of himself, you're not going to be as good. So if it continues down that road with the offensive line, you're going to have some issues. I still think, even if they're forced to play, and Cam seems healthier, I'm not sure about Landon. Obviously, Lane's going to be healthy. He continues to play at a high level, so it should be partially better at the bare minimum. Then already you're going to be a better offense just with those two guys being healthy. Or you're already better. And then the second part is the entire group. And I talked about this with Zander a lot. So you have 11 starters. I think one performed it better, or at least maintained his normal performance from a reputation standpoint. One of the 11, and that's Devonta Smith. And you could add Tyler Steen. I don't count Tyler Steen, so it's 1 of 10 because Tyler Steen was a first-time starter, and he was fine. So it was 1 of 10. Everybody else regressed. Everybody else regressed. And that is a bunch of proven star players. We know how much reputation the Eagles offense has, their history. They're probably declining as they're getting older. But to have that many go in a negative direction at the same time is rare. And that many good players who take pride in their performance, some of them are going to have bounce back seasons. So I think the offense is going to be better without A.J. Brown. Has nothing to do with A.J. Brown. Has nothing to do with Kevin Patullo and Sean Mannion. I think the offensive line is going to be better. And I think that will fix first down, at least to a certain extent. And even if you're 2nd and 7, instead of 2nd and behind the sticks, you're going to be much better on 2nd and on 3rd down. So you fix first down, and I've said this for months now, you fix the offense. Everything else falls into place.
Super chat from Joshua Jackson. And I'm just going to go the rest of the show without my glasses, John, because for me to keep going back and forth, taking them on and off. John won't admit KP struggled. Nick helped with calls because of wrong plays. Stout blames calling. First in 4 years run past bad. Hurts MVP 22-24 with good OCs.
Yeah, I mean, it's easy. Chase Daniel, who I know. First of all, if you read Jeff Stoutland's quote, Zander and I did it. He blamed a number of things. I called it the ultimate GPS test. Wherever you had the GPS programmed, in this case, this guy wants to blame Kevin Patullo. Low-hanging fruit, easy to do. That's fine. Jeff Stoutland first blamed execution. Second, one of the other things he blamed was running bad plays in the bad defenses. Again, there's a misunderstanding. So in the modern NFL, basically, most plays, you come up to the line of scrimmage, and you have a passing option or a running option. And you'll always hear quarterbacks, if you listen on to the TV, you'll hear them say, kill, 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 or can. What they're doing is changing plays at the line of scrimmage because the quarterback goes up, whether he's in the shotgun or he's under center. He sees what front. If it's not what they're expecting, you got to kill the play and you got to go to the opposite play. So Chase Daniel, just this morning, thanks, Chase, because I didn't know this was coming. Everybody blames the play calling for the Eagles. Easy answer, low-hanging fruit, as I said. But it's never that simple. In the NFL, the quarterback isn't just running the play. He has to get out of the wrong one. If that's missing, the offense stalls. This is a massive test for Jalen Hurts. Again, you guys, you want a simple answer. It's part Kevin Patullo. It's part Jalen Hurts. It's part injury. It's awful first down play. But they want it so badly to be the easy answer so it can be fixed easily. And it can't be fixed easily.
John, during the course of a game, what's the average number of offensive plays during the game?
60 to 70. If you're humming, you'll get above 70. But
so 60, just use 60 for an easy number. Of the 60 plays that are called, that come in from the OC or Nick or whoever they come in, and just the OC, as the 60 plays are called from the OC, how many of those plays, if there's an answer or approximate answer, are changed by the quarterback once the play is called and the quarterback comes up to the line or he's in the gun? How many times are those plays changed?
It depends on the quarterback. And obviously, as you look at veteran quarterbacks, it's guys have been around for a long time. Guys have been in a different generation of football. It's much larger. It's not much in the modern game. It's not nearly as much as it was because again, it's shifted to this philosophy of two plays coming out of the huddle. So they're basically just killing from one play to another. But killing from a running play to a pass play or vice versa. So if you want to consider that a change, I think when people think of old school audibles, when you're completely shifting things, that doesn't happen that often anymore. They don't have the time to teach it. You don't have the practice time to build up the chemistry. So they've sort of morphed to more of a college mentality. Now, sometimes, there's a run the play. Like if your 4-minute offense, you're winning by 2 touchdowns, they're not giving the quarterback the option to kill from run to pass because they just want to run out the clock. Similar, if you're down 2 touchdowns, you're really not killing plays because you have to pass the ball. So it's not just you'll always have 2 plays, but in the guts of the game, that's generally how it is. And again, you can watch forget the Eagles. You can watch any game, and most teams use kill, and some use can, but you'll hear the quarterback saying that all the time. And what they're doing is, look, Tom Brady explained this better than anybody. As what a play call, you're just playing the odds. You're watching the film. You're saying this is what they do in second and long, typically, and you call a play based on their tendencies. And if the quarterback sees the front and they're doing something else, or is savvy enough to read what they're doing, Nick Sirianni says you're always looking for that fish on defense who's giving away what they're trying to do. You're always looking for that little advantage, and then you can kill and get out what Chase Daniel was saying, get out of a bad play into a good play. That happens on the field in real time. So when Jeff Stoutland said that, you can ignore it, but Jeff Stoutland also that. And I think how How is the offensive coordinator the play caller, whether it's Kellen Moore or Kevin Patullo, whether it's Sean Mannion, who you like, or Nick Sirianni, who you dislike? When that communication system is cut at 15 seconds, what the hell can he do? That's where the quarterback takes over.
If the fix on offense is first down, right? That's the fix. If the Eagles correct first down, that makes them a better team if they do it.
Oh, yeah.
Right?
Saquon Barkley, I believe, had 41 negative runs last year. 41 negative runs. Second in the NFL. Only Ashton Genty, a rookie with a bad team, was worse. They had 41 from a guy who had the strongest rushing season in NFL history the year prior, literally set the record if you include the postseason. And they had 41 negative runs. 41. So, at some point it just becomes common sense. If you're in 2nd and 3, you're in a really good situation as an offensive play caller, as far as everything's on the table. The defense can't, the whole goal of modern defense is to get you in 3rd and long. And that's where the Brian Floreses of the world just unleash havoc with all these complicated blitz schemes and all these angles they take and players and guys like that, the havoc defensive coordinators, as I like to say. That's their whole goal, to get you in 2nd and 3rd and long and make you predictable.
You know
how many goal.
You know how many of those 41 negative plays for Saquon Barkley were on first down?
The vast majority. The vast majority. I don't have the actual number, but yeah, I mean, they were in, and you can go back and listen to, and I'll take Kevin out of it because, people, he's the scapegoat. You can listen to Nick Sirianni, you can listen to Jalen Hurts. They all said the same thing. First down. We're putting ourselves in negative situations. Look, there are some teams that even the high octane offenses. So, Matthew Stafford, the MVP, Sean McVay, what you want to copy. Are they more equipped to overcome 2nd and 12 than the Eagles? Yes. Are they going to do it consistently? No. Even the best teams don't the same goal, the best offensive teams don't overcome 3rd and 12s very often. They do it better than the poorer passing teams, obviously, but the odds are still heavily stacked in the defense's favor. So, that's what Nick was talking about all season. That's what Jalen was talking about all season. That's what Kevin was talking about all season. And that's why I think fixing the offensive line and fixing first down, for all the talk, and Nick kind of said this as well, because I think everybody's so hyper focused on the passing offense, and he brought up when he was talking about hiring Sean Mannion, it's about handling the junk they got in the running offense, because they want to bring in Kyle Shanahan's, and it's really his father's stretch scheme, wide zone scheme, whatever you want to call it, because it's better equipped to handle the junk that they were seeing to stop Saquon Barkley. And for whatever reason, people missed it or just don't care about the running game. But I know the Eagles care about it. I think it's going to shock people that the realization is going to come at some point. Sean Mannion is actually here to fix the running game more than the passing game.
You pause for 15 seconds, Johnny Mac, here on Birds 365, hour number 1. Have you booked your vacation to the Jersey Shore? Go to wildwoodsnewjersey.com. It's that time of the year as the Eagles move into their mini camp this weekend. Memorial Day, a month away. Back in 15.
Welcome to the Jet Setters and the High Rollers, to the Thrill Seekers and the Night Owls. Welcome to everything you could possibly want on one 5-mile island. Welcome to the Wildwoods. Book your stay today.
Devin Jackson will be along here coming up in hour number 2 from the Inquirer. We'll talk with Devin. I believe he was out in Pittsburgh, so we'll have an opportunity to talk to Devin Jackson, and we'll continue our conversation here on Birds 365. And we thank everybody from JAKIB Nation who's very active in the chat. Appreciate you being here, John. I want to play one more Howie Roseman soundbite. So, and I think it's good dialogue, which will then lead into the conversation with Devin Jackson coming up here. What time's he coming on, by the way, in hour number 2?
9:20.
All right, so 9:20. Devin Jackson will be along. Let me see if I can get this up. And hang on with me here. So here's Howie Roseman again on Sirius XM, talking about Lemon and the way it all played out in the trade. Here we go.
In terms of a sweet spot and trading up, right, did you get the sense that Pittsburgh was going to take Lemon? You know, the drama, the reality show optics were pretty amazing without question when you see the telephone call. Did you have intel from, going through a mock or working up, with the analytics people, like, all right, these are certain spots where Mekhi could ultimately go? Take us through that in terms of knowing who you had to leapfrog there to ultimately get Mekhi.
Well, if we're being totally transparent, it wasn't like we were just trying to get to 20. We were trying to get ahead of that pick as well, because when you feel really strongly about a player, you think at every pick he's going. And so you got this kind of heartbeat going through when you hear the pick is in, and you got to look. We get it about a couple of seconds before on our computer screen, and you get it. And a lot of times I'm veering over Jeffrey because I don't put it on my computer. I let him have it on his computer next to me, and I'm veering over his shoulder trying to figure out, who's going. And so, to say that we were willing to sit there and just get ahead of Pittsburgh, it wouldn't be true. We were trying to get up. We were trying to get the player. It so happened that we got in front of them. Certainly, they were one of the teams that we thought would be in the mix, but more importantly for us than who anyone else wants, it's who we want and who we want to go get, and we wanted to get the player.
Okay, that's Howie Roseman on all of the movement to get Mekhi Lemon in that first round, which tells me, obviously, that the organization has big expectations, and they've identified Lemon as the player to be able to deliver for this offense, minus an offense that's minus one of the best receivers in the league, in A.J. Brown.
Not yet, but it will be. Technically, he's still here, as Howie will say. A.J. Brown is still an Eagle.
Right? Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, I think people should come to grips. If they haven't come to grips, he's not going to be here shortly after June 2nd. But
yeah, John.
With it was interesting because I was trying to figure out when he was talking. Now, he did the same thing last year with Jahad Campbell. It's been his recent history. He only moved up one spot last year, but he tried to move up as high as 22. And he was trying to get Jahad Campbell the whole time. And this year, evidently, was trying to move up to 15 or 16 with the idea of getting Mekhi Lemon. Now, why that's important is because Monroe Freeling went 19. So, there's certain guys you're not going to get. So you don't, they're not the top 5 guys, the David Baileys, the Arbel Reese. Obviously, you're not taking a quarterback, even if Fernando Mendoza was there. You're not taking a running back, even if Jeremiah Love was there. You had the defensive players, Sonny Styles, Caleb Downs, maybe Doubtful, though. They wanted to go offense. Spencer Fano. Caden Proctor's the one guy I think they would have taken ahead of him. And that would have been sort of in their purview. Now, they didn't think Lemon would get past, as most of the league didn't think he would get past the Rams at 13. The Rams went with Ty Simpson instead, and they kept that a secret. A lot of talk about that. Nobody knew the Rams and Sean McVay was playing that game where he's like, I'm not interested in him. They were very interested in him. And that once he got by the Rams, then it's like, well, the next group of teams, are they going to look at receiver? And the vast majority of them weren't going to look at receivers. So the Eagles were trying to get up and make sure they got Mekhi Lemon once he got past the Rams. So it's been his history, and he's willing, and he did it not only with Jahad Campbell. He moved up to get Devonta Smith. He moved up to get Jordan Davis. He moved up to get Jalen Carter even. He moved up a spot there. So his recent history has been, and he mentioned on draft night, they thought he'd be a top 15 player in the draft. And they thought, to boil it down even more, they thought he'd go 13 to the Rams. So, they liked the player, but they didn't think he'd be there. And then once he gets by the Rams, you start to get excited and try to move up. But I think the most notable part is that they had him ranked ahead of most of the offensive tackles. And that's notable because there were so many good offensive tackles.
If they didn't execute the last-minute trade or whatever it was with the Cowboys to be in a position to get him, or if Lemon went elsewhere, is Howie taking a wide receiver?
No.
In the first round?
No.
And see, that's what I don't understand. That's where I have, and listen, I'm smart enough to know what I don't know. This is why I'm asking the question. That's why I have a disconnect. If your number one receiver, top receiver in the league, is leaving the building, your offense needs to get better. So you've hired, you're bringing in a new OC. You're a weapon down. Your wide receiver 2 is now your wide receiver 1. Why wouldn't you go for a receiver as your primary going into the draft?
Because all players aren't,
or was it, and it remained their priority because Lemon was there?
No, it's about the player. It's not about the position. As evident, they had 15 guys, so who they knew or they thought would go in the first 15 picks, and those guys he was the last one of those guys, and they were picking 23rd. So obviously you have a drop off at that point. So it doesn't. The same thing happened with tackles, and I pointed out, there were 7 potential guys who may have gone in the first round who played tackle. And too often, again, I think it and what 6? I think 6 went, might have been 7, but might have been all 7. Did all 7 go? Yeah, Caleb Loma went. All 7 went. So, the thought, well, if you don't get Proctor, you'll just get Freeling. If you don't get Freeling, you'll just get Blake Miller. If you don't get Blake Miller, you just go down to Caleb Lomo, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. That's not, how good teams work, because they have different sort of pods of players, and you have a group, maybe hopefully at 23, you have a group of 4 or 5, and you want to be comfortable with any one of those 4 or 5 players. If not, you'll try to trade down, you'll try to trade out, and it goes throughout the draft in different stages. You always have a group of players you're hoping to target. So the assumption that they just took Mekhi Lemon because he's a wide receiver, because I know there's going to be those perceptions, unfortunately for Mekhi, that he's here to replace A.J. Brown. Look, if he went 13 to the Rams like everybody in the Eagles expected, the Eagles aren't taking KC Concepcion or, Denzel Boston or another receiver. They would have went in a different direction. And it might not even have been tackle, because at that point, Freeling and Blake Miller were off the board, and they would have probably had to gone with Max Ionacor, and I don't think they would have been comfortable there. So it might have been a completely different position. And I'll probably get that information at some point, but so the idea that you're picking a position, that's one thing Howie's very good at. It's always about the player. It's not about the position.
I had to put this up from the chat because it's a compliment for me. I only look 30 years older than Zander. I think I look a hell of a lot older than that. Krause in for Zander Krause. It's Birds 365 here on the JAKIB Sports Network, along with John McMullen. I'm Joe Krause, presented by Fritz Bianculli, a different type of law firm for those who are seriously injured. Devin Jackson is going to be along coming up here in hour number 2. We'll pause for a commercial break. When we come back, we'll continue our discussion. ESPN, by the way, posted yesterday their evaluation of Mekhi Lemon. We'll talk about that, and then we'll lead into conversation with Devin Jackson. Again, thanks everybody for being here in the chat. Don't forget to subscribe and to like the show. You do so well. How many shows, Johnny Mac, are we up to now on Birds 365? I know I always ask that question, but I'm amazed at the longevity of the program, the tenure of the content, and the amazing community that lives and exists here on Birds 365.
We are at 1,427. 1,427. Coming up on 1,500.
That's a lot of minutes. That's a lot of minutes. Good stuff.
Yeah, football 24/7. You got another 490, plus we do the specials, the draft. So well over 2,000, I would say, overall.
Wow, good stuff. We'll take, by the way, Eagles Daily. Eagles Daily. 8 to 14 minutes. Coming up in May. More details to follow. Eagles Daily. Zander will tell you all about it next week. Back in a moment.
Ignite your nights with free live entertainment daily, only at Live Casino and Hotel Philadelphia's Center Bar. 7 days a week, enjoy some of the region's top party bands, performers, and DJs as they take the stage in the heart of the casino action. Great cocktails, live music, and lively moments. It's all happening at Center Bar at Live Casino and Hotel Philadelphia. Visit livecasinophilly.com for more details and the complete list of upcoming events. Must be 21 or older. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER.
This is Eric. When he got injured in a car accident, he called Morgan & Morgan. He not only gets a lawyer, he gets trial lawyers like Sam and Jessica who are in it to win it. He gets his own investigators with briefcases, leather ones. And if you ever have questions, our customer service folks keep things rolling. Injured? We're your army. Morgan & Morgan, America's largest injury law firm.
Welcome to the Jet Setters and the High Rollers, to the Shot Takers and the Tastemakers. Welcome to the Viewfinders, the Thrill Seekers, and the Night Owls. Welcome to everything you could possibly want on one 5-mile island. Welcome to the Wildwoods. Book your stay today.
In our hometown, we all look out for each other. We go the extra mile to lend a helping hand. We step up to keep our communities going strong. And at Independence Blue Cross, we're here to keep you going strong. We've been deeply rooted in our communities for more than 85 years. And that connection to members has earned us our spot as the #1 health insurer in the region. So while you look out for your neighbors, know IBX is always looking out for you.
Your gut says Miami is going to win, and you should take the over. Your gut also said your NFT selfies would only go up in value. They didn't. But your head is on Sports Grid and knows the QB is in concussion protocol. The backup has a 45 QBR against the zone coverage. The New York D has the most sacks in the league. So yeah, trust your head. It's smarter to be on Sports Grid.
EAGLES. Eagles.
Birds 365 on a football Thursday. John, let me just answer a question here. Hang on a minute. Let me find them. Here we go. KC. We never have ads during Birds 365. Dude, I got to hit the head. All right. So
we always had ads.
Yeah.
And we always had ads, but lately we haven't.
All right. Well, you're going to have them tomorrow as well, my friend. Thanks very much.
Yeah. Often I say I got to hit the head.
I got to hit the head, dude. I got to get a wall. I got to get a water. I got to figure out what I got to make sure I'm prepared to get Devin up when he pops in. But good stuff. Appreciate it.
Sometimes it's just a reset. Yeah, man.
Yeah, no, appreciate everyone being here on JAKIB Sports on this edition of Birds 365. It's the day before the mini camp where the rookies will come in for 2 days, tomorrow and Saturday. John, now you're going down to NovaCare tomorrow or today. What's that all about? What are you doing down there?
Supposedly, it's not official. Everything's last minute with the Eagles, but I believe they're going to do some media availability with some of the rookies today, and then we're going to go down for practice. Nick's going to be tomorrow. So I believe certainly practice is tomorrow, and we'll be in for, again, a short period. Today, the tentative plan is that they're going to have some rookies available to speak. Just stay tuned on that, but we'll see how it shakes out.
John,
I actually wouldn't mind if they pushed it back because the Sixers are playing tonight and the Phillies are playing a doubleheader, so it's going to be a shit show.
By the way, I'm rocking the orange Kango.
Yeah. Congrats to the Flyers
on what was a great win last night, and you know why that was that was a great win, John. Yeah, they won. They closed out the Penguins. A talented, grizzly, veteran Penguins team came at them from the first puck drop. Came at them hard, played hard, created opportunity for themselves to win that game and force a Game 7. And the Flyers never buckled. They never conceded. The Penguins wanted to will their way to Game 7 yesterday, and that's just not conversation. It was obvious and evident on the ice in each one of those third periods, even into the overtime, before the Flyers get the overtime winner and now advance to take on Carolina. But it really was more than just the Flyers closing them out. I think it was how strong they were against a team with Crosby and everybody else that was determined to win that game at all odds.
Yeah, I mean, it looked like they were getting outplayed in overtime, kind of hanging on, and to be able, obviously, when you get a shutout in that type of situation, you got to give the goaltender a lot of credit. But yeah, I mean, considering how long it's been, what, 8 years? They don't have a ton of playoff experience, so to be able to win a game like that is big for the development of a young team. You know, you learn from those types of situations. Um, and hopefully they can keep it going. You know, I think, you know, football and basketball are the two sports where you kind of know who the best teams are by the end of the season. But you always see upsets in hockey and baseball where you can get hot at the right time and make a run. And maybe the Flyers can make an unlikely run. They knock down one pin, you move ahead.
Well, the next one's tougher. Will be tougher. Will be tougher than the Penguins. Carolina will play. They'll move into they'll play Carolina. They'll start in Carolina. We'll see how it all plays out. But it did give me an opportunity to break out the orange Kango as we get ready now and transition back into Birds 365. Waiting for Devin Jackson. He'll be along. He'll be along shortly. Let me see, John, if I can. And I know I'm trying to bring a lot of things up onto the screen here just to be able to add some context here. So let me do this, and then I'll get your thoughts on this. This is the ranking. ESPN put their ranking out yesterday, and you can see some of the conversation and some of the reference into McKay Lemon. And if you're not from Philadelphia, if you just showed up today and you said, hey, what's this Birds 365? How good is their first round pick at number 20? And this is the first thing that you read, you say to yourself, holy shit, this guy was one of the best picks of the draft. That's what it says. And if McKay Lemon is one of the best picks in the draft, in the 2026 draft, right? If that's accurate, man, this guy's going to be an immediate impact player.
Well, you know, it's always one person's opinion. I don't know who did that. Might have been Matt Miller, might have been Justin Reed. I don't know. Might have been Mel. We're going to have Devin. Devin's a tremendous draft analyst. So, you know, it's part of the industry, unfortunately. We have to grade players. Now, the Eagles will tell you, you're not going to know till year 3 what type of player it is. But what you can say is the value aspect of it. And most people had this guy rated higher than where the Eagles got him. And certainly higher where the Eagles started. So, from the perception standpoint, they got good value. But I always pump the brakes with any rookie. There's some that you know, I thought there were 2 blue chip players in this draft, Jeremiah Love, Caleb Downs. I don't love the situation Jeremiah Love's put in, but Caleb Downs, I think the Cowboys had a great pick. But what you can say is that the Eagles got a player that wasn't supposed to be there at 23, never mind 20. So from that standpoint, you have to call it a success.
We're going to get Devin Jackson up from the Philadelphia Inquirer in just a moment. One last question, John, before we bring Devin into the conversation. Excited to get his not only his thoughts, but how he evaluates the Eagles' picks and the impact that they're going to have. Is there added pressure on Lemon because of the loss I know he's still in the room.
Still an Eagle.
But the departure of A.J. Brown. Is there added pressure on him, or is the wide receiver room with all these different pieces designed to offset, some of that expectation from your first round pick, who might be the best athlete in the draft? And he's not, but for the Eagles he is, because that's their pick.
Yeah, I mean, unfortunately, I do think there will be a little bit of pressure on him because he's, drafted in the first round the same year the Eagles are probably going to trade AJ on June 2nd. There will be some of that, but I don't think it's I think that's more outside noise than inside noise. They built this wide receiver room up with Dontavian Wicks and Hollywood Brown and now Mekhi Lemon. And remember, the real replacement for A.J. Brown is going to be Devonta Smith. That's already here. And he will essentially, hopefully, at some point be the replacement for Devonta Smith. Maybe that's Dontavian Wicks early, but everybody bumps up. But there will be some of that because AJ is a wide receiver and they drafted a wide receiver in the first round. But I think that's very, low-hanging fruit. But there will be some people that point to that connection.
All right, let me get us set up here to receive Devin. So just give me a minute. Let me bang this out. Let me bang this up. Maybe bang.
There he is. Yeah.
Devin into the show. Welcome into Birds 365. Devin, I know you're looking for Zander, but as somebody said in the chat, Zander got 30 years older today. I'm sitting in for Zander Krause today, but welcome into Birds 365, brother. Thanks for being here.
Yeah, thanks for having me on. Excited to talk through these Eagles draft prospects and, how the draft all ended up.
Yeah, at @RealD_Jackson. You see it there. Make sure you follow Devin on the X platform, Inquirer.com. He and all our friends down there did a tremendous job covering this draft. Devin was out in Pittsburgh. Glad he made it back. So Mekhi Lemon, I don't think many of us saw this coming. I think, and the Eagles thought that the LA Rams were sitting there at 13 was never a realistic opportunity for them. All of a sudden, they kind of surprised the world, shocked the world with Ty Simpson, and he starts to fall a little bit, and the Eagles go up and get him. That's been Howie Roseman recent history. I don't want to cloud your picture. What are your thoughts on Mekhi Lemon and the fit in Philadelphia?
Yeah, I was surprised that he was there at 20. I think most people expected him to go sometime before that, whether it was the Rams or the Jets at 16 or maybe someone else inside the top 20. But yeah, I was surprised that he was there, but was pleased with the pick because I think he's a player that, I think plays much bigger than his size. I think he's only like 5'11", 192. Just the competitiveness at the catch point, his ability to go up and elevate and make catches over the middle of the field in contested catch situations. I know he played a lot of slot in this final season at USC, but showed some ability to separate as an outside receiver. So yeah, I'm excited that he got to Philly and that he ended up being the pick. And I think he's someone that, I think is going to fit really nicely in what the Eagles might want to do under Sean Mannion, whether it's what he's able to do with the ball in his hands after the catch, what he's able to do over the middle of the field and, making those tough catches in tight windows, and just the ability to when you throw in the ball, he's going to come down with it more often than not. Whether he plays more slot receiver in the NFL, does he play some outside receiver? I think that remains to be seen. I know Howie Roseman and Nick Sirianni both complimented his ability to do both. I talked to his inside receivers coach, Chad Savage, and he thought the same thing as well. But yeah, I think Mekhi Lemon is going to be a nice fit with the Eagles and what they were seemingly going to do under Sean Mannion, whether it's those quick, play action throws, getting the ball out Jalen Hurts' hands quick, whether it's on crossers, across the field. I think Mekhi Lemon and the vision potentially with him on the Eagles, I think it's going to be a nice fit overall.
I'm glad you brought that up because that bothers me. I'm always like, I mean, to me, it's about projection, not what he did at Southern California. We went through this with Justin Jefferson. Everybody, well, he played slot at LSU. And I don't want to compare those two players, but, well, he played slot because Jamar Chase was there. I believe Terrace Marshall was there. It was like 6'2". And he was the guy who could play in the slot. And everybody was wrong that had that evaluation that he was just a slot player. I'm glad to say here this is just not a slot player, just a slot player because, Devontae played a lot in the slot last year. And I think there would be some redundancy if you talk about losing some of that juice outside the numbers. So you do think he can project to not all the time, but go outside and be effective?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I wouldn't expect him to. I think one question, obviously, that I had in his evaluation is consistently beating press coverage. So, I think in those situations, if he can prove that he can do that at a consistent level, I think you're not going to have to bring him in motion as much. Allow him to get off the line of scrimmage. But yeah, I think there's potential that he can be a guy that plays some outside receiver along with being in the slot. I think he can live out on the island a little bit as well, and the way that he runs his routes, the way that he can create separation and break the cushion of defensive backs. I think that skill set can translate on the outside or outside the numbers.
Devin, can he do that now? Like not in 2 years or 3 years of developing. Can Lemon do that right now going into the 2026 season? Because it is a big drop off with the departure of A.J. Brown.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I think the Eagles wouldn't have picked him if they didn't think he could contribute right away and step in right away and play. And I think for Lemon, I don't think there's going to be a big learning curve in terms of going out there and being productive. Obviously, learning the new offense and garnering some chemistry with Jalen Hurts, that's going to take time. But I think if you're picking a receiver this high in the draft, you're expecting him to contribute day one and step in day one and be productive day one. I think Lemon has all those attributes to do so. And, everyone that you talk to that knows him and knows his background, they believe he will succeed in Philly as well. So I do think Lemon will step in right away and play right away, because that's what the Eagles need, from this first round pick. And obviously the potential of losing A.J. Brown in that room, there's going to be a lot of production needed to fill in.
We all knew how he was going to go. He was very honest, and how he was going to go offense early, and it turned out to be they didn't take a defensive player until the 7th round. Now, they did trade for Jonathan Grenard, which was a big-time pickup for Vic Fangio. But I think the surprise, though, Devin, was it was skill, 1-2. Eli Stowers going at 54th overall. Obviously, tremendous athlete. Still a work in progress when it comes to the blocking aspect of it. How much did that one surprise you? Because that surprised me a little bit, thinking about Sean Mannion and what they want and setting the edge in the wide zone and the running schemes and things like that, the stretch schemes. That one surprised me. Did it surprise you?
I mean, I kind of had a feeling going into the draft like Eli Stowers was going to be a guy that the Eagles really liked, and just the fact that he was there at 54 and someone that they obviously really enjoyed the skill set, what he brings to the table in terms of athleticism, being a former quarterback, the athleticism over the middle of the field. I could see the vision in what the Eagles are looking at with Eli Stowers and understand, they probably need someone more in that blocking aspect too to kind of help and look for the long term there. But also the pass catching element of Stowers' game, I think, is what they're going to be needing most. After next season, Dallas Goedert is starting to age a little bit, and everyone else in that room, whether it's Grant Calcaterra or Johnny Munt on 1-year deals. So I think with Stowers, it's more of a long-term play, looking to see what he's going to be in the next 3 or 4 years versus someone maybe that's a little bit more block heavy in their skill set translating to NFL. But yeah, I thought Stowers felt like, in the days leading into the draft, he felt like he made a lot of sense for the Eagles, even though they did go Mekhi Lemon in the first round. But yeah, I think Stowers is going to be an interesting fit in Philly. Like Lemon, a lot of his production came over the middle of the field between the hatches. And, I'm more interested to see more so than Lemon, because I think Lemon has, even more scheme versatility. I'm more interested to see how Stowers is deployed, just because I think when you look at where he was successful at Vanderbilt, it was like on those seeing passes and after the catch, and they designed a lot of ways to get the ball in his hands, whether it was shovel passes or dump off passes, things like that, screens. So I'm more interested to see in this Sean Mannion offense. How exactly is he utilized on a down and down situation? Is he more of a situational player early in his career, where they want to get him up the seam or get the ball in his hands? But I'm not sure he's going to be an every down player immediately, because of the blocking is much so a work in progress. But I'm interested to see the way that Stowers will be deployed in this Eagles offense.
All right, Markel Bell, I got to tell you, my favorite pick of the draft. They finally got the offensive lineman. I'm interested from the perspective of, look, now everybody's not worried about, does he have to play? Number one, he's not going to play. You get to learn behind Lane Johnson and Jordan Mailata. I think he projects, even though he played left tackle in college at Miami, he projects better as a right tackle as the pro level. He's already been working. He mentioned that. We talked to him. He's been working with Duke Manyweather. He's already working on that, because most teams saw him as a right tackle. But the length, Devin, I mean, my percent. I used to cover, because I'm old. I used to cover Bryant McKinney. If you remember him, you're young, but he was just this big 6'8" guy, and even when he got beat, it was so hard to get around him. By the time you got around him, the quarterback was out and gone. I see some of that with Markel Bell. The length is so ridiculous. I think the upside is huge. What do you think of Markel Bell at 68? Not only the player, but the value.
Yeah, I was really happy with the pick. Just thinking about the Eagles, obviously looking for a succession plan after Lane Johnson eventually retires. But yeah, I thought, going into the draft, he was a guy that, seemed a little less likely to get picked by the Eagles, just because it felt like they were going to go offensive line early. But, after getting Mekhi Lemon and Eli Stowers, the priority kind of shifted to, all right, who's kind of the next best player and someone they can get at a position of need for the long term. And Markel Bell checked those boxes, just a 1-year starter at Miami, and what he was able to do, showing his footwork, ability to keep guys from getting the quarterback. I don't think he allowed a sack the entire season. And that included, the playoff run and the national championship run for Miami as well. And a guy that clearly is still very much so developing, 6'9", 346, the power that he has as a pass protector, the length obviously stands out. And yeah, I'm excited to see, what he looks like with NFL coaching over the next few years, and that next step that he kind of takes. I think when you have a player that, of that size and just of that length, it's going to be difficult for defenders to get past him. I think it's just going to be about, him continuing to get stronger and, being able to kind of translate to the NFL speed of pass rushers and continuing to be able to mirror those pass rushers as well. Pass protection, I think, taking a step as a run blocker as well. But yeah, I'm excited about the pick and to see where he'll be in a few years, because I think of those three guys, those first three picks, I think Bell has the potential to do some really great things in Philly as he continues to get more NFL coaching and has some time to develop and not be thrown to the fire immediately.
Devin, let me ask you one. Let me take you back one. I'm sorry to have to ask you to go back and comment on Stowers for just one. I had one question I want to get in, and then I'll fast forward back into Bell. But on Stowers, if Goddard goes down, is he ready to play? Does his skill set allow him to be ready? I know he's got to develop and everything with the system and everything else, but is he a guy that can step in right now if Goddard gets hurt 3 games into the season? And if not, then what?
So I think he is not going to take over the full responsibility, I think, of Goddard's duties. And the for Goddard, it's blocking, it's receiving, it's a little bit of everything at the tight end position. I think the Eagles are a little insulated in the fact that they're still going to have Johnny Munt potentially as their run blocker. So I think you're going to see maybe a little bit more of combinations with Stowers. Like, maybe they get a little creative in the way that he's utilized if Goddard goes down. I think they're going to absolutely use his receiving skill set, even with Goddard healthy, but I think they'll lean more on Stowers' receiving upside if Goddard goes down, more so than his run blocking. So I think it'll be a combination of different things that they put out there. I think they'll maybe pair him up sometimes with Johnny Munt on the field at the same time, or they'll split him out in the slot. I think they're not going to throw him into the exact role that Goddard was filling if he does go down 3 games into the season. But I do think they're going to lean on Stowers even more if Goddard does go down early, specifically in the receiving element of the game.
And one more back on Bell on the offensive line, Johnny. Then I'll turn it back over to you. Just one on there. In terms of the offensive line, from a depth standpoint, they're vulnerable. Is Bell a piece that makes them less vulnerable? I mean, that offensive line needs to hold up. Chances are they won't. Johnny Mack has said it many times. You can't legislate injuries. But they're going into the season with potential concerns. So what does that mean?
Yeah, I mean, they made picking the 6th round, getting Micah Morris to kind of help with specifically the guard position, and kind of insulating them there. Obviously, they also have Fred Johnson as well as kind of their depth swing tackle, and then Markel Bell. Obviously, they selected in the 3rd round. So I wouldn't say they are, I would say the depth is okay. It's certainly not, I don't think, at a level where you feel completely comfortable potentially throwing out, a rookie guard if one of the guards go down. Obviously Fred Johnson showed that he can hold his own when Lane Johnson went down during last season. But I think you feel okay, but not great about the situation, just because there is a drop off after the 5 starters, and it's one of those things that if one of them goes down, you're going to have to find a way to kind of insulate yourself and make sure that those guys aren't being exposed on an every down basis as backups. So it's going to be difficult for the Eagles to go through a season without some injuries, just because they haven't been able to do so the last few years. But I think while some of the picks that they made in this draft class helps them in the long term, I think in the short term, you're going to have situations where there are going to be potentially some inexperienced guys on the field at times this season. And I think that's where the offensive line development is going to have to be key under Chris Cooper and what he's able to do as now the Eagles offensive line coach. I think it's going to be a big coaching job for him this season, because obviously the starters are at a really good level with your first 5, but the next 5 or the next few that come in because of injury or because of other things, I think Cooper is going to have to do a really good job getting them ready and getting them game ready, and especially in this new scheme.
Yeah, I got to tell you, Devin, a lot of day 3 dart throws over the past 2 seasons now. You mentioned Micah Morris being added, but you got Cam Williams from last year, Miles Hinton, Holland Pierce, undrafted kid. You have them outside. Markel Bell adds to that. And then you have Drew Kendall inside, Willie Lampkin, Micah Martin, a lot of young players. But, yeah, Chris Cooper's going to be on the hot seat right away. You don't got to hit on all of them, but you got to develop some of them. And it'll be an interesting storyline. Day 3 as a whole, you mentioned Micah. Also got Cole Payton, a little bit of a surprise, quarterback, North Dakota State. Very Taysom Hillish, left-handed. I saw a lot of comps. I like that. Did play in a pro-style offense, though. I think that helps. Did complete 72% of his passes, but it is what it is at that level. Cole Wisniewski thing, right now, I think the Eagles are going to add somebody else at safety at some point. But there's an opportunity at least for a late round potential hit there. And then, of course, Uar Bernard is going to be the story, I have a feeling, tomorrow when we're down there. Just the absolute freakish measurables, athleticism. But that's a multi-year project. I think people forget how long it took Jordan Mailata. So that's a multi-year project. And then Keyshawn James Newby, sort of this year's, instead of Antoine Powell-Ryland, it's Keyshawn James Newby. So APR turns into KJN. What'd you like about the day 3 picks? What stands out to you?
Yeah, I feel like most of those picks on day 3 were guys with extreme athletic measurables. Cole Payton, 1-year star at North Dakota State. The running ability that he showed across his entire career at North Dakota State. They specifically put in run packages for him early in his career to get him on the field and have him on the field. And he's a powerful runner, someone that showed some explosiveness, ran a 4.56 40 at the combine. And I think more so just other than his running ability, I like his touch on deep passes as a thrower, his ability to create off-platform throws, the escapability that he showed at North Dakota State, the athleticism, and they played to that a lot in his 1 year starting, moving the pocket a lot and play action and getting him out on the edge. So I'd be interested to see what the long-term vision is with the Eagles with Payton. Do they want him on the field early in his career, as kind of that runner and use him in those Taysom Hill packages that we saw with the Saints for so many years, or do they truly want to develop him as, kind of a backup quarterback? I'm kind of interested to see where the vision is there. Micah Morris, the guard from Georgia, someone that is extremely powerful and athletic too, tested off the charts. You look at his RAS score, it's extremely high, and you can see moving forward, the kind of the explosiveness that he has. I don't think laterally he's as explosive as he is moving forward, backward and forward, but I think he's a player that you has the skill set and size to develop into potentially a star down the line, or at least a backup player. Cole Wisniewski, probably one of my favorite day 3 picks. I like that he is a former linebacker now playing safety. So those run fits that he comes into, or he did at Texas Tech, it showed that he is a player that can, mix it up and be really physical. Has some size to him at 6'3", 219. A player that I think, needs to get a little bit better and more consistent in deeper zone coverages. But in terms of everything that's happening in front of him, he's able to close on passes, get his hands up for deflections, and just a smooth player that, can get out of his back pedal pretty quickly. And someone I think will find a way to make the roster as a special teamer. And, I do think he has some traits to, if the Eagles really like him, he can really pick up Vic Fangio's scheme really quickly. Maybe he can get some early playing time in his career. Uar Bernard, obviously, his story is amazing, and he's able to, what he did through the International Pathway Program, and obviously the measurables testing wise was off the charts. A guy that hadn't played American football yet in his life, so I'm interested to see what that long-term development looks like for him. And then, I agree on Keyshawn James Newby. I think he's a guy probably, practice squatter type of player where he has some pass rushing upside, but as a run defender, I have some questions, and he lacks a little bit of length. So I can see the Antoine Powell-Ryland comps there just because he's a little bit undersized. But I think, overall, I really like the day 3 pick of Cole Wisniewski, and at a position that obviously the Eagles need more bodies and need more youth. And I'd be interested to see how that battle shapes up and who else they bring in to compete at that safety spot.
Yeah, I'm surprised Howie gave so much Reed Blankenship-like love for Cole Wisniewski. That's putting a lot of pressure on him early, but, Reed was undrafted. So if you look at it from that perspective, Who knows? A lot of these guys aren't going to have opportunities to find the field because the Eagles still have good depth as overall football team, but safety is one position where you could see a path. The other position, Devin, Rocco Underwood. You need a long snapper. So if I'm going to predict an undrafted guy to make this team, it's going to be Rocco Underwood. But there are some other Alabama guys, any of the undrafted guys that we got. Deontay Lawson, I'm sure people remember him if they're college football fans because he was a starting linebacker at Alabama. Jaden Roberts, a big interior offensive lineman from Alabama. Howie had to get his Alabama guys in there. Any of the undrafted guys did you like and pique your interest?
Yeah, Daquan Wright, the tight end from Ole Miss, piques my interest. I think, he's a guy that probably should have got drafted. I was a little surprised that he was available after the draft, and I kind of understand that as well because he didn't test athletically throughout the process. So just one of those things where if you don't test, you don't end up showing off some of your skill set. When you watch the film, he can create after the catch, and he can we broke off a lot of big gains, and someone that has some nice route running ability. The size obviously stands out with Daquan Wright. The blocking is okay for now. It was okay for the college level, but I do think it'll obviously need to develop more in the NFL game. But yeah, he's just someone that I think has an outside shot to potentially make the roster. I think obviously you'll have to impress specifically as a pass catcher, in Eagles training camp. But yeah, I'm really intrigued by him. Is he going to be healthy? Is he going to be someone that can show off that skill set? I think that remains to be seen. But I think the Eagles got some nice value. And again, Daquan Wright is a UDFA, and even if he doesn't make the roster right out of camp, I wouldn't rule him out. As a guy that sticks around over the course of the season, and someone that the Eagles stash on their practice squad.
Devin, what do you think of Deontay Lawson? I don't only think that he's has a chance. I think he makes the 53. I loved him as a player at Alabama. I think the kid can flat out play. Another guy who didn't do a lot of testing because of previous injury going into the combine. What do you like, or do you like Lawson?
I do like Lawson. Yeah, I remember. I think his 2024 season was a little bit better than 2025, and obviously he was a little healthier. I think that previous season than 2025. But yeah, he has a quick downhill trigger. Someone that has some exceptional zone coverage range. Gets his hands on the football over the middle of the field. He showed some nice ability as a blitzer as well. And yeah, I think for him, it's just going to be showing that he can disengage from blocks at the second level, and be able to be a little bit more consistent tackling wise. But in terms of what he's able to do, shooting gaps and the play speed that he plays with, I think all that skill set not only translate as a potential, linebacker depth piece, but specifically on special teams when you need those guys that are speedy and can get down the field and can make tackles on special teams. So I think for him, the path is going to be special teams and showing that he can prove that ability and prove valuable. Obviously, when we look at the linebacker room already, Jahad Campbell will be coming back from off-season shoulder surgery. Obviously, they like Smile London from Georgia from last year's draft as well, that they drafted in the 5th round, in addition to Bond and Jahad Campbell and Jeremiah Trotter Jr. So it's a position that's a little bit stacked already, too deep for the Eagles. But if Lawson can show that he can maybe unseat Smile London as one of those backups and prove to be valuable on special teams, I think he'll have a chance to make the 53, specifically in the special teams aspect.
Here's where I think he has an impact on this roster. The one thing that I will miss and that I enjoyed so much last year was when Nakobe Dean was cut loose at the line and knocked over whoever stood in front of his way and got to the quarterback. That, I think, is where Deontay Lawson has an impact, on this.
I don't think he's going to be on the field to have that kind of Nakobe Dean aspect.
Yeah.
You got to be a starter to have that kind of
starter to have that. But that's the replacement. To me, that's the replacement for Nakobe Dean's, for that part of Nakobe Dean's game.
Yeah, I can see that. I think that, I think obviously it's going to be tough, like John said, for him to get on the field early, just because of the depth that they have at linebacker right now. But if he can show that ability in camp, I think the Eagles will certainly love more guys that can cause havoc, specifically as a blitzer. So I think that's one of Lawson's strengths of this game. And I think it'll be interesting to see, one, if he's healthy in training camp, and two, if he can kind of replicate that ability. But yeah, I think special teams will be a big calling card for Lawson.
Yeah, I think Eagles fans should get fired up about JAKIB Campbell. I want to see that athleticism on the field and see what that looks like. He's got to get healthy as well. But I think JAKIB Campbell's going to be a really, really good player in this league. At @real_D_Jackson, make sure you follow Devin on the X platform. He and his Inquirer teammates did a tremendous job with the draft this year. So go check out all their coverage at Inquirer.com. He's done a tremendous job for us. I'll leave you with the NFC East, the rest of the NFC East. Now, the Giants had 2 top 10 picks. The Cowboys had 2 first-round picks and picked at 11 overall. I think they got the best pick in the draft, and that's Caleb Downs as far as value. He was one of my 2 top players. And then the Commanders had a top 10 pick. What do you think of the division and how they handled things?
Yeah, Dallas went, defense heavy with their first 3 picks: Caleb Downs, Malachi Lawrence, both first-round picks, and then Jayshawn Barham, the edge linebacker, kind of hybrid player. I thought Dallas did some nice things in the draft. Obviously, getting Caleb Downs will be huge. Someone that I think they said they're going to start off playing him at nickel in Dallas, kind of similar to what the Eagles did with Cooper DeJean last year, or a couple years ago, I should say. So I'm kind of interested to see the way that they deploy Downs in Christian Parker's defense. Obviously, the former secondary coach for the Eagles. Malachi Lawrence has some juice as a pass rusher. Jayshawn Barham is a guy that can rush the passer. He can play more edge than linebacker this year, but also has some interior linebacker experience. So they want all defense. They want to continue to improve that defense after some struggles they've had over the last few years, and having Christian Parker there calling the defense and having some nice pieces to work with. I'm kind of intrigued to see how it all comes together for them. I think the Commanders made the best of what they could with the limited picks that they had. I think getting Sonny Styles, is going to really solidify the middle of their defense in Washington. And then you get Antonio Williams, someone I think is going to have an early impact as a slot receiver in that offense for Jaden Daniels. So they get a nice defensive piece, nice core defensive piece at 7, and then add a slot receiver to kind of help them there. And then the Giants, I thought, had one of the better drafts, across the board. They get Arvo Reese at 5. I'm sure they didn't expect to have him there. I'm kind of interested to see what they do now with kind of their logjam of edge rushers, because they have so many now. Abdul Carter, obviously Brian Burns, Kayvon Thibodeau. Thibodeau is a guy that, the Giants say they aren't trading, but I know that they probably need to shop one of those guys, because you have too many guys in the room. You're adding Arvo Reese to Thibodeau, Burns, and Abdul Carter. Just not enough snaps to go around and play all of them consistently. But yeah, I like what they did there, and then adding Francis Mauigoa to potentially play guard for them to kind of solidify their interior offensive line, and then they add some early contributors in Colton Hood and Malachi Fields on day 2. So I like what they did. They give Jackson Dart another receiver weapon. They get better on defense with Arvo Reese and Colton Hood. And they look like they're starting to build some nice things, a nice foundation under John Harbaugh in the New York Giants era. So I think most of those teams got better. I think the Commanders probably is kind of a net neutral just because they didn't have many picks to come in, and you get Sonny Styles, and that certainly will help their defense right away. But I still think they have some holes to fill. But yeah, Dallas and New York, I think they both got better in this draft, in addition to the Eagles.
Devin Jackson joining us here on Birds 365. Devin, appreciate you coming on board, man. Good stuff, good insight. Thanks so much.
Thank you so much.
Thanks, bud.
Good stuff from Devin Jackson here on Birds 365. A couple of minutes left. Johnny Mac here on the show today. I'll be right back here again tomorrow. We're efforting a conversation in hour number 1 of our Football Friday, in addition to looking to what will happen down in South Philadelphia. An analysis from Dallas on a Dallas versus Eagles comparison post draft. So we'll see if we can put that together for tomorrow's conversation. I'll give you last word here. We got a couple of minutes left in the show, and I will give you last word today.
Yeah, it's funny because obviously the Eagles have a tremendous reputation, deservedly so, for the draft, and Howie's gotten a lot of positive grades, and deservedly so. I think you have to add Jonathan Grenard as the biggest impact. Getting him for 2 third-round picks, I think, is ultimately going to be the biggest move for the immediate impact of the Philadelphia Eagles. But, you look at it, and the whole draft is set up to help the bad teams. And the Giants have been bad for a long time, and they're able to get 2 top 10 picks. And the Cowboys have been okay, but they had the 11th pick, moving to get Caleb Downs, who I think is one of the best players in this draft. And then they had a second first-round pick after trading Micah Parsons and get a pass rusher, Malachi Lawrence. And then the Commanders, although they didn't have a ton of picks, as Devin mentioned, had a top 10 pick, and they got the 7th overall. And we had Ian Cummings on yesterday, and he had Sonny Styles as his number 1 player in the entire draft. So, there are some good players added in the NFC East. And in my opinion, Caleb Downs is right there with Jeremiah Love as the best players in this draft. So got to look in the rearview mirror too, Krause. Some of the other teams got better.
Well, I tell you what makes me concerned after here. By the way, Devin Jackson, great job by him. As you said before he came on the air, he's fantastic. Great takes from Devin Jackson. I'm glad I had an opportunity to actually sit in on the show and hear him in real time. So good stuff from him. Thanks to Devin Jackson for joining us. I almost feel as though on this day in April, I am very, very worried about the Eagles going into the 2026.
Ooh, very worried.
And John and Zander will tell you, I'm a Jalenite. I love Jalen Hurts. I think the guy's a winner. I love him.
Well, he's proven to be a winner.
He's proven to be a winner. I love him. I'll take what he gives us on a game-by-game basis. I want him to do more, but I'm a Jalen fan. I'm worried about this football team. I'm worried about them getting better. I'm worried about Jeff Stoutland not being there. I'm worried about the new OC. I'm worried about Devonta Smith being the number 1 now and what that means to him versus when he was nestled in behind A.J. Brown. There's a lot of things that make me stop and say, oh my God, are the Eagles on the doorstep of entering into a rebuild, or do they legitimately have an opportunity to make big noise in 2026? I don't know the answer. Again, I'm smart enough to know what I don't know, but that's kind of how I feel.
Well, I mean, you look at the defense first and foremost. There's no questions there. I think, on paper they look better than what they were last season, and they were pretty good last season. You add Grenard to the mix, who I think is a more explosive pass rusher than Jalen Phillips. Tariq Woolen over Adoree Jackson. One bit of concern at safety with no Reed Blankenship, but they look very good on defense. I think Jahad Campbell, as I said, is going to be a star in this league. So if anything, they have more talent on defense. And then offensively, yeah, there's a lot of question marks. But as I mentioned, generally, still very aging offense, I would say. Obviously, they're aging out from the perspective of contracts alone because you have so many highly paid people. You're going to have to start moving on. So that might be more of a rebuilding process that's going to start with Mekhi Lemon and Eli Stowers. So maybe on offense, but they're good enough. They still have enough veterans. If that offensive line is healthy, they're a Super Bowl contender. If they're not, then you might have some problems on offense. But you're still going to have that defense to keep you in games. And it's April 30th. They don't have to play on May 1st, last time I checked.
That is the truth. But can I at least end the show with that thought from you, Johnny Mac, that if the offensive line is healthy, this football team right now is a Super Bowl contender.
Oh, yeah, easily.
That's going to do it for this edition of Birds 365 here on the JAKIB Sports Network. No post-Zander show today. I apologize for that. He'll be back with you on Monday. I'll be right back here tomorrow. Let me see this. Hold on. Let me get one. Zab would never tell us you're a Jalenite. Oh, no. From my heart.
There's a lot of Jalenites.
Am I allowed back?
A lot of Jalen haters, a lot of Jalenites.
Am I allowed back into Birds 365 tomorrow? Good stuff today, man. Again, thanks to Devin Jackson. Of course, everybody from JAKIB Nation, from our great community that you guys have built here on Birds 365. I stand in awe daily on how powerful and impactful this community is on JAKIB Sports. So I really, really appreciate that. Johnny Mac, I'll see you tomorrow morning, right back here on JAKIB Sports.
All right, big rookie camp preview. Exciting.
All right, good stuff. We'll have all that tomorrow. Until we get to tomorrow, see you next time, everyone.
You've been listening to Birds 365, the destination for the passionate Eagles football fan who bleeds green. If it's Eagles football, we're talking about it. Debate inside the locker room and guests that are some of the greatest football minds from around the region. We hope you enjoyed the show. We know we had a blast. Make sure to like, comment, and subscribe, and we'll be back soon. But in the meantime, hook up with us on social media at JAKIB Sports. See you next time on Birds 365.